Hey there guys, HarryCricket3 here and welcome to a brand new video. Now, as you can see by the title, today we are going to be predicting the whole Champions League group stage. So of course the Champions League begins tonight. So I thought let's do some research on all 36 teams, see how they prepared for this year, see the fixtures they've been given, and to predict a solid top 8. Then the seeded playoffs, which if you don't know are positions 9 to 16. Then the unseeded playoffs, which are positions 17 to 24. And then the remaining 12 teams who were eliminated from the competition at the first round. So let's review each team and decide who's going to finish where. We're doing this in alphabetical order, so let's start off with Ajax of Amsterdam. Now they lost the league last year to PSV in a very embarrassing fashion where they were top for so long. Then at the end, I don't know what happened, but they just lost so many games in a row and PSV just ended up winning and they stole the title from Ajax. Ajax's biggest problem, I think, is that they've sold a lot of their key players this summer. Jordan Henderson's gone, Yoel Harto's gone, Brian Brobby to Sunderland and Borna Sosa to Crystal Palace. They've all left the club. And there is a bit of pressure here on Wout Weghorst and Kasper Dolberg to score the goals. If they can do it, then I think they've got enough results within them. Games-wise, there's a few tricky games like Inter Milan, Chelsea, Benfica. Olympiacos, I think they could win that game, but Ajax is an intimidating place to go to. They don't make it easy for you, but with the fixtures, I think they'll be close to getting unseeded. I'm going to have them as eliminated for now though. But let's move on to Arsenal now. Arsenal, I think a lot of people are underrating in this competition. They are in the top 5 favourites to win, according to the bookmakers. I think they've got a real chance. Now, last year they finished in the semi-finals. They lost to PSG. They beat Real Madrid in such a good fashion in the quarterfinals with Declan Rice's free kicks and everything. And they've improved their squad so much. They've brought in Martin Zubimendi, they've brought in Pierre Hincapié, Mosquera as centre-back, and their two wingers, Eze and Madueke. And they're all really good additions. But there is a bit of pressure on Mikel Arteta. He needs to win a trophy soon. If he wins the Champions League, I think everyone will finally shut up and say, you know what, fair play, Mikel, because when you joined, this team wasn't even in the Champions League, and you've got them winning the Champions League. So if they do, unbelievable to Mikel. I definitely think they're in the top 8 finish though. They have got a few tricky fixtures such as Atletico Madrid, Bayern Munich and Inter Milan, but I back Arsenal to get top 8. I think they can do it. They make their home ground a really tough place to go to. If Real Madrid is struggling there, you know you've got a good home ground. But let's move on to Atalanta now. Their biggest problem is that they've got rid of their manager Gasperini. He's decided to leave after such a long time. He developed the club so well. Now in terms of losses, their biggest loss is Matteo Retegui, who left for the Saudi Arabian League because he was unbelievable for them last season. But they have kept a lot of other players. Adam Lukman still there. I'm not sure how well he'll get along with the new boss, Ivan Juric, but he's there and he's a great goal scorer. They've got their other star players like Charles de Ketelaere. Their defence is still the same. I do like Atalanta a lot. They were good last year. They challenged Barcelona. I think they got a draw away at Barcelona in the group stage originally. So they have got a really, really good squad. They won the Europa League in 2024, not too long ago. But they lost to Club Brugge in the first round of the playoffs last season. So that is a bit disappointing for them. I'm going to have them as seeded for now, but that's putting a lot of faith in the manager. That could change depending on some of the other clubs here. Let's move on to Bilbao. This is their first time in the Champions League since 2014-15, so that's a long time. They've been just playing in the Europa. They're managed by Ernesto Valverde, who was the ex-Barcelona guy. He's the one who lost 4-0 to Liverpool at Anfield, but he did get a lot of that Barcelona side. So you've got to give him credit for that. They've kept Nico Williams, which is a huge plus for them. If they lost him, I think this would be a much trickier competition for them, but they've kept him, kept the core of their squad. No real big losses this summer for them, and they've even brought in Aymeric Laporte back to the Bilbao scene, seeing as he was born and bred as a Basque guy. The only thing with Bilbao is I think they've got a lot of tricky fixtures. They've got to play Arsenal, Borussia Dortmund, Newcastle, PSG, Atalanta and Sporting. So am I backing Atalanta or Bilbao here? That's the kind of question I'm asking, but I'm going to say they're going to get unseeded. I think they're new to the competition after such a long time. I back Atalanta to get more results. So on that basis, I think they're going to win some of your lower games, but I don't back them to beat Arsenal, Borussia Dortmund or PSG. But Sporting and Atalanta, maybe they could get a result there. But let's move on to a really big club in European football, Atletico Madrid. Now, they've had a really poor start to the season under Diego Simeone. There's a lot of pressure on him because he is the highest earning manager in the world, and he's won a few La Liga titles for Atletico Madrid, which is brilliant. But in Europe, they've always got so close, yet they've never really won it. Last season, people did have them as a dark horse to go all the way after a really good start in the league phase, but they were really unlucky the way they lost to Real Madrid, because they should have won that game, really. They were very good in both legs, and they lost after the whole penalty shootout. Julian Alvarez missed one and he wasn't allowed to retake it, and they changed the rule regarding it. Yeah, it was a bit of a mess for Atletico Madrid in the end, but they have kept Julian Alvarez after a lot of links to Liverpool. Alexander Sorloth is also another big goal threat for them, so watch out for those two. The biggest problem with Atletico this year, I think, is the fact that they've got some tough fixtures. Liverpool, Arsenal and Inter Milan is quite tricky. After that, though, it does get quite comfortable. They got Frankfurt, Union Saint-Gilloise, PSV, Galatasaray and Bodo Glimt. I think they'll still get top 8 though. I think they're good enough, they're defensively solid enough, and they're very good in European competitions. Okay, so let's head over to Germany now for Borussia Dortmund. They were finalists to Real Madrid in 2024, which they lost after a really good first half, but they just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. Now, one thing about Dortmund is, in the last few years, they've been quite poor in Germany. Since 2023, when they should have won the title, I think the last 2 seasons, they haven't been that great. But in Europe, they've never really let it down. They were just short of the top 8, but they got drawn against Barcelona, and they did win the second leg. They beat Barcelona at the Signal Iduna Park, and it's a very intimidating home ground for any team to come to, and you can see why. The yellow wall just kind of comes down on you. It's impossible to try and defeat that. All their goals are really going to come from Seydou Guirassy and Karim Adeyemi, so Guirassy was outstanding last season. I think he'll really have that again to him, because they've got a good manager in Niko Kovac. He will get them results. Their fixtures look okay. They've got Juventus, Bilbao, Man City, Tottenham, Inter Milan. No one that's really screaming out at you there, but Man City, they've got that game away, so I think they'll probably lose that. Tottenham, Inter Milan, Juventus, Bilbao, that's all very similar level of teams right now, I'd say. I think they've got enough in them to get a few wins there. However, considering how good the top 8 I think are going to be, I'm going to have them just in the seeded playoffs. But I think they will be one of the best teams at that. But one of the favourites to win the whole competition this year are Barcelona. Now, they obviously lost in dramatic circumstances last year in the semi-finals to Inter Milan, when Acerbi scored that late goal and then changed it, and then in extra time, Inter Milan won it. Yeah, it was a really, really good run for Barcelona last year. They were second in the whole table to Liverpool, and they are the second favourites, according to the bookies, after Liverpool to win the Champions League this year. But a lot of people do have them as their number one. I will admit, if Barcelona do win the Champions League this year and Spain maybe get a World Cup win, could it be the first year of Lamine Yamal winning the Ballon d'Or? We could see it this year, because they play really good football. Hansi Flick's got them cooking. The only thing is, I'm still worried about them defensively. I think they leak too many goals, and even if they don't, I think they leak too many chances. I think the smarter teams will get past them quite easily. That's why I think they need to fix their weaknesses a little bit. But out of the 8 fixtures, the only tricky ones are really Newcastle, PSG and Chelsea. And I back them to beat Chelsea and Newcastle. So PSG is probably a really tricky one that everyone will watch. But I think Barcelona could rack up the most points of the whole leagues to phase. I'm going to have them as the league toppers. But after that, it's all draw dependent. So they may even lose in the round of 16 like Liverpool did. But I think they've gone the best draw so far. So Barcelona, for me, they will top the league phase this season. Let's move on to another big favourite, Bayern Munich. Now, they lost to Inter Milan in the Champions League last season. It wasn't really their year for the Champions League. They lost to Villa. They were so close to getting knocked out by Celtic, who put a really good performance at the Allianz. But they've strengthened well. Elise is now improved even more. The big loss for them is Jamal Musiala. His long-term injury will really, really damage them in terms of elite talent going forward, because they have Kane, Luis Diaz and Michael Olise, but after that it's getting a little bit weak. They've lost the depth that they had in Coman, Musiala, Sane, and they've got Nicholas Jackson to provide that depth instead, which is good. You could do a lot worse, but I'm a little bit worried about that side of things. Last year they did not get into the top 8, but this year they've got Chelsea, PSG, Arsenal, Sporting and PSV. So really Chelsea, PSG, Arsenal are the big games there. If Chelsea beat them, then yeah, you are looking at a little bit closer in terms of finishing the top 8. But I think for now we'll put them in the top 8. I am questioning that though. I would have them as the 4th best out of these 4, definitely for right now, considering their fixtures are a little bit harder than the other 3. But let's move on to Benfica, who I think are a really underrated team in terms of European competition. I remember when Liverpool reached the final in 2022 and we had the draw at home to Benfica. We beat them away. They came to Anfield and that game ended 3-3. That's when we saw Darwin Núñez for the first time, and he scored about 4 offside goals. Really nice finishes, but they were all offside. That should have been a sign right there that you can finish. You just can't can't stay on side. In the end, he couldn't finish or stay on side for us. But yeah, they have got a really, really good team. And last year, they were entertaining to watch. Those games against Barcelona were amazing. And then real marksman, watch out for this guy, Pavlidis. He was outstanding last season. And yeah, he's going to score all the goals again for them. They have lost Aktakoglu, Cabral, and Florentino Luis, who they sold to Burnley. I mean, imagine that, Benfica to Burnley. That's the state European football has got to in compared to the Premier League. Their away games wise, Chelsea, Newcastle, Ajax, Juventus. I guess Chelsea's hard, Newcastle's hard, probably Juventus is hard as well. I mean, Ajax is tricky, but I think they'll beat Ajax. But I think home games wise, they have got much more comfortable games. And because of that, I back them to get through. But I think they'll probably just get into the seeded phase, maybe around 13th, 14th place in the seeded thing, because they are a good European team and we can't disrespect that. Let's move on to Bodo Glimt now, one of the biggest stories of the Champions League. They beat Lazio in the Europa League last year, and it was a huge story when they beat them on penalties to reach the semi-finals, when they eventually lost to Tottenham. So that's a shame for them, but they have qualified for the Champions League this time, and everyone's happy. The people just want to see them play. They play a really nice brand of football. I think their manager could go to some really big heights once he leaves this job. Their draw actually isn't that bad. They've got Slavia Prague, which I think will be an interesting game. A lot of fight from the Slavia players compared to the technicality of the Bodo Glimt players. Galatasaray as well, you could do a lot worse. But they got Borussia Dortmund and Atletico Madrid both away from home, and I think they'll lose both of those for guaranteed. Man City, Juventus, Monaco, Tottenham is your home games. All of those teams I think will enjoy going up there and playing, but I don't think they're going to beat a single team of those at home, unfortunately. So Bodo Glimt, they are going to be elimination. I think they're going to be guaranteed elimination. Ajax I'm still uncertain of, but Bodo Glimt, I think your games are just too tricky. You've been done dirty here. If you had an easier draw, I would have backed you a little bit more, but sorry Bodo, I think you guys are going to be going home, which goes against what my friend Daniel said on the second episode of On The Spot. So go check that out if you haven't already, when he had them as his dark horses to qualify out of the group stage. Let's move on to Chelsea now. I think they could be possible dark horses for this. Their draw looks quite good for me. In terms of away fixtures, Bayern, Karabag, Atalanta, Napoli. And then at home, they've got Ajax, Benfica, Barcelona and Pafos. So that is actually really, really good set of fixtures for Chelsea. They beat PSG in the Club World Cup, which showed a lot of promise about their squad. I just think their attacking talent isn't good enough to win the competition overall, but I think their draw has been done beautifully for them, so I'm going to have them in the top 8. Otherwise, I would have probably had them as 10th or 11th best team in Europe, but the draw has done them really well. So that is already 5 teams there in my top 8. There's only 3 spots left. But let's move on to Club Brugge, who have been very impressive in European football, I think. Now, last season in their playoffs, they knocked out Atalanta before losing to Aston Villa in the round of 16. And even that game, they were very competitive. So I think they're a really, really talented European side. Their manager clearly knows what he's doing. Fixtures-wise, Sporting, Kairat, Bayern, Atalanta as their tricky fixtures away from home. They have got Kairat, which is a big travel from Belgium all the way to Kazakhstan. It's going to be exhausting. In terms of home fixtures, Monaco, Barcelona, Arsenal and Marseille. I think Barcelona and Arsenal coming to Club Brugge, they'll be expected to win. Monaco and Marseille, you could do something there. But I do think there's enough promise here in the Club Brugge side for them to maybe show that, you know what, we can reach the playoffs again. We were close last time. They finished, I think, 23rd, 24th. They were very close to getting knocked out here. But can they do it again? I'm going to say yes, they can. I think they'll just about reach the unseeded playoffs just because they've got tough fixtures, sure, but they've got some winnable fixtures there in Monaco and Marseille. Now let's go to Denmark, to Copenhagen. They're back in the Champions League after a few seasons out. The problem is with them, they've got some extremely tricky fixtures. They have drawn Kairat, and it's a home for them, no travel needed for that. As well as that, Leverkusen, Dortmund and Napoli are all heading to Denmark. But away from home, Barcelona, Villarreal, Tottenham and Karabag. Karabag and Kairat, you could get the wins there and possibly cause a little bit of an upset. If you could beat Tottenham or if you could beat a Leverkusen, then yes, you've got the opportunity there to qualify. But I'm sorry, Copenhagen. I just think the lack of Champions League experience of the squad right now is going to come back at you a little bit, and I think that they're also going to get eliminated. But now, it's a really interesting team in Eintracht Frankfurt. Now, they won the Europa League last year. They lost to Tottenham in that really nice fixture, which is close, but you could see the difference between a Premier League team and a very good Bundesliga team. They have lost Omar Mamouche and Hugo Ekitike in the last 12 months, which is a huge loss for their attack. But they brought in some good players in Jonathan Burkhardt and Ritsu Doan, who plays really well for Japan, so watch him at the World Cup for sure. Their biggest problem is also their fixtures. They've got Galatasaray, Liverpool, Atalanta, Tottenham, and then away they've got Karabag, Barcelona, Napoli and Atletico Madrid. You could not ask for a harder draw, I would say. Yes, they could get 6-7 points, but that's not going to be enough. And last season, we saw RB Leipzig get eliminated at the first stage. This season, I think it's going to be Eintracht Frankfurt. I like their squad a lot. I just think their fixtures have been really badly done for them. And it's a shame, because if they had some slightly easier teams, if they had some French teams in there, Monaco and Marseille, I would back them a lot more. Moving on to Galatasaray, this is a really interesting team. Just hear this list of players that they have in the squad. Victor Osimhen, Mauro Icardi, Leroy Sané, Ilkay Gundogan, Mario Lemina, Lucas Torreira, and Davinson Sanchez. They've got a lot of star quality in their team. The Turkish league in general went big this summer with a lot of big players signed, but Galatasaray squad is really good. They've 5 wins out of 5 in Turkey so far. Their only really tough games, I'd say, are Liverpool, Atletico and Man City. Apart from that, their draw is winnable. So because of that, I would have them as an outside shout for the top 8, but I'm going to have them as a seeded playoff team for now. I think they could be one of the higher ones here because of how good their draw is. Now let's move on to one of last year's finalists, Inter Milan. They lost it in remarkable fashion to PSG. Now as soon as the round of 16 started, I had them down as my winners for the whole thing. And they got to the final, so I'm quite happy with that prediction. But they lost the final in a really embarrassing fashion to Paris Saint-Germain. Simone Inzaghi is left as the manager, so the new manager is Christian Chivu. He hasn't got anywhere near the experience in Europe as Simone Inzaghi does. But Inzaghi was a very good cup manager. I'm not sure Chivu can achieve the same things. They just lost a remarkable derby d'Italia to Juventus, which I talked about on my new series This Week in Sports, so check that out if you haven't already. But they have a star team. They have Marcos Thuram, Nicola Barella, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, Jan Sommer. It's a really, really nice squad. It's just aging a little bit and they're slowly redeveloping it, which is good. But they haven't started Serie A too well, but I think they will grow into it as the season slowly begins. In terms of away games, Ajax, Atletico Madrid, Union Saint-Gilloise, Borussia Dortmund. Yes, Dortmund and Atleti is quite hard away games, but I think they'll be fine with Union and Ajax. Home games wise, Arsenal, Liverpool, Kairat and Slavia Praha. Arsenal, Liverpool, I think Arsenal came there last season and they got a win against Arsenal. Liverpool, they'll have to make it tough for us again. I think they could get a draw in that game, as well as having Kairat and Slavia, who they are expected to beat. It's a good set of games, but I think they're going to have something about them that's not going to quite get them over the lines in some of the away games. So because of that, I'm going to have them as one of the better seeded playoff teams, probably finishing 9th or 10th, just short of the top 8. But I don't be surprised if they finish top 8 because their fixtures are good and their squad is good. So don't underestimate Inter Milan at all. But let's move on to the team you cannot see right now, which is Juventus because of their black logo. They reached the final in 2017, but since then it's not really been that impressive. They got knocked out to PSV in the playoffs last season, which I think says a lot about what state their club was at, but they are redeveloping it nicely and they're doing very well under Igor Tudor. And yes, the Derby d'Italia, as I just mentioned, they beat Inter Milan 4-3, a remarkable game. But their draw looks good. Borussia Dortmund, Sporting, Pafos, Benfica, Monaco, Bodo Glimt, Real Madrid, Villarreal. So the only tricky games there are really Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund when you think about it. I think the other games they should feel fine in. But it's Juventus, they seem a bit weird in the Champions League the last few years. I'm not going to back them to win every game. I think it'll be close between them and some other teams to finish the top 8, the seeded. I'm going to have them seeded for now, but I might change my mind on that in a little bit. I might push them slightly higher up if any of the other teams coming up I think won't do as well as I expect them to. But let's move on to the remarkable team from Kazakhstan, which is Kairat Almaty. They have qualified for the Champions League. I think Kazakhstan shares a border with China, if I'm not wrong, so this is one hell of a travel for whoever has to get an away game there. And they will be hosting Real Madrid, so Real Madrid fans, get excited for that travel. But the home games actually don't look that bad. Apart from Real Madrid, they've got Pafos, Olympiacos and Club Brugge. So if you want an outside bet to who's going to qualify, maybe these guys are the ones, because their home games are decent. Away games wise, they go to Arsenal, Copenhagen, Inter Milan and Sporting. Yes, all of those are quite hard, maybe Copenhagen, and possibly you could get results of Sporting, but I'm really intrigued to see what they're like this year. It's a good set of games for them. They'll probably get a few points, but for me, sorry Kairat, it's your first time here. I'm going to have you eliminated for now. Let's move on to Bayer Leverkusen though, who have lost a lot of star names this summer. Florian Wirtz, Jeremy Frimpong, Granit Xhaka, Jonathan Tah have all left the club. And more importantly, they've lost their manager Xabi Alonso, who made this whole project tick. They already sacked Erik ten Hag after two games, I think it was, and they have brought a new manager in the ex-Danish coach who got Denmark to the Euro semi-finals in 2021, I believe. So They have got a good manager in, and they've already won their first game against Eintracht Frankfurt. Their draw is actually not that bad. I think the only tricky-ish games are PSG, Man City, Newcastle and Villarreal. But the other 4 games, I think you'd expect them to win. But with the new squad, they may struggle to reach the playoffs because we need to look at this Leverkusen squad in a completely new light as we saw the old one in. I'm going to say they'll get enough points for the unseeded playoffs. I think surely their squad is good, their manager is good. Surely they can fix something here to make them a respectable German club again. Because yeah, they finished high up in the Bundesliga last year. They're back here. Come on, Leverkusen, don't prove us wrong. Next up is my club, Liverpool. We are the bookies' favourites to win the whole Champions League this year. But will we do it? Because I'm still a little bit unsure. Last year, we did top the table, but then we lost to PSG in the round of 16 because we got done by a really hard draw where PSG finished, I think, 14th, 15th, 16th, and then they hit form as soon as they beat Man City. And we got them, and we got absolutely obliterated in both legs. But on penalties, we lost the shootout, and it was a big shame. In terms of fixtures, Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, PSV, Karabakh, Marseille, Inter Milan, Frankfurt, Galatasaray. Yes, you'd expect Liverpool to qualify from that. The only games that people are going to be really watching out for is the Real Madrid and the Atletico Madrid games, I'd say. But you'd back us to win most of the other games. Yes, we've started poorly, but we are 4 from 4 from the league. We haven't really found form yet. I think we will find the form eventually. Who knows, with Alexander Isak coming in and all the new signings, Florian Wirtz, could we be onto a winning side here? But I am going to have us in the top 8 though, for sure. Because I think our fixtures are good, and I think people would probably expect Liverpool to go through there. Manchester City now they're a really interesting team to analyse because they had a really poor league phase. They lost to Real Madrid in the first round of the knockouts, and it was a very short European stint for them. This may be a good competition for Pep because I think he still kind of realises that Liverpool and Arsenal are a little bit ahead of him in the league. If he does well in the league, then sure, they'll prioritise that. In terms of a draw, the only tricky games for them are really Napoli and Borussia Dortmund, I'd say. In terms of a draw, the tricky games for them, I would say, are Napoli, Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund. The other games are Leverkusen, Galatasaray, Monaco, Villarreal. I expect them to beat all of them. So on that basis, I'm going to also have Manchester City in the top 8. Yes, they should have finished top 8 last year and they let everyone down. I am going to have them in my top 8 this time. Okay, now 2 French teams coming up with Marseille and Monaco. Marseille first. They are managed by Roberto De Zerbi, who used to manage Brighton. Their squad does look good. They've brought in Neil Maupay, so if you want any memes of the Champions League this year, he is your man. Watch Marseille. But Benjamin Pavard from Inter Milan, really good signing. Matt O'Reilly from Brighton, good signing. And Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who we all know is also there as well. They've also brought in Angel Gomez, Timothy Weah, Aubameyang is their striker, so it's a really talented squad. And the big thing for Marseille is their fixtures actually look not too bad. They've got Liverpool, Newcastle, Real Madrid and Atalanta. But the other 4 games, Sporting Lisbon, Union Saint-Gilloise, Club Brugge and Ajax, I think are really good for Marseille. So I'm going to have Marseille as one of the seeded playoffs teams for now, but that could easily be pushed down. For Monaco, however, they were actually quite good in the Champions League last season, I thought. They brought in Paul Pogba, which is one of the huge news in France this season. For them, attacking-wise, it's all on Balogun, Minamino, Ansu Fati, which I think is a good front line to have in the Champions League, but they finished 17th in the Champions League last season and they lost to Benfica in their playoffs 4-3. Fixture-wise, I'm a little bit worried for them because they got Real Madrid, City, Tottenham, Juventus and Galatasaray. But the other 3 games are actually quite good in that they're away to Paphos, Bodo and Club Brugge. So they've got a chance there. So on the basis that their fixtures aren't as bad as other people's, I'm going to have them in the unseeded playoffs. I backed them to just about get there. But let's move on to Napoli, who are my dark horses for the Champions League. I think they could go very far here. The only thing is, Antonio Conte's side typically don't do well in Europe. With Chelsea, Juventus, Tottenham, he's never really done well in the Champions League. So on that basis, I'm a little bit concerned. But everything else-wise, it looks really good. They're performing unbelievably in Italy. They won the league last season against Inter Milan. This year, they probably are the favourites to win Serie A again. And it's a really good squad. The home stadium, I think, is genuinely one of the best in Europe. Every time Liverpool goes to play Napoli, we never seem to be able to play. We just seem to be able to get sucked in by the crowd. 3 years, I think we've been there the last 7 or 8, and every time we have never won the game. It's a really good Napoli squad. It's a really good Napoli manager. He just needs to find a way to make his football work in Europe because he can. I'm sure he can. But fixture-wise for them, they need to try and win all their home games. And for home, they've got Sporting, Frankfurt, Karabakh and Chelsea. And then they're away to PSV, Copenhagen, Benfica and Man City. Man City is the only away game that I think I'd see them really struggling. Benfica, they should be able to post a challenge. Same with PSV and Copenhagen. I think Napoli have got to finish as a seeded playoff team. I'm going to have them here. Let's move back to England now with Newcastle, who qualified through finishing 5th in the Premier League last season. Their thing is they have lost Alexander Isak, their main Starman, but they've brought in 2 strikers in Johan Visser and Nick Voltemade, who's already scored for them in the first game, which is very good. Malik Chio's come in, Jacob Ramsey's come in, they've got backup keeper Aaron Ramsdale, so their depth does look a lot better than it was last time they were in the Champions League. But last time they were in the Champions League, they beat PSG, I think 4-1 it was. It was a remarkable game at St James's Park, and that's what they have, very similar to Napoli. They have an unbelievable home stadium. They just need to use that the best as they can, because the teams that are coming to Newcastle are Barcelona, Benfica, Athletic Bilbao and PSV. I think they can beat PSV, Bilbao and Benfica. They might even pose a little challenge to Barcelona, who knows. Away-wise, Leverkusen, Marseille, Union Saint-Gilloise and PSG. That's also doable for Newcastle, I think. They can get these results over the line. I'm going to have them as a seeded playoff team as well, which means I think I've got 9, which probably means one of these teams is going to have to drop down, but we'll decide that in a tiny bit. Okay, so Olympiacos are next from Greece. They have brought in Mehdi Taremi, who's a brilliant striker to have. He was really good at Porto, decent at Inter Milan, but Inter Milan realised that he's not really playing with Thuram and Lautaro Martinez as the main guys. So Olympiacos want to snap them up, and that is a perfect signing to have when you're back in European football. They need a lot from Roman Yaremchuk as well, because he's a star player for them. They've got 2 really winnable fixtures in Paphos at home and Kairat away. But other than that, Real Madrid, Leverkusen, Barcelona, Arsenal and Ajax is very tricky. You could get 6 points, possibly 7-8, but I think Olympiacos are going to be slightly in the mud here, and I think they're not good. I think they'll be one of the better teams that get eliminated, but I think they will get eliminated just about. But staying in the Mediterranean, right next to Greece, is Cyprus and Paphos. They have been represented in the Champions League this season, and damn, that derby versus Olympiacos will be unbelievable to watch. But other than Olympiacos, they're playing Bayern Munich, Kairat, Villarreal, Monaco, Juventus, Chelsea and Slavia. Unfortunately for them, I think they also will be an unseeded playoff team. I think they're not going to get enough points. I think that even the Slavia Praha will probably beat them. I think the only game they'll probably win is maybe Kairat. But let's see how they'll do, because it'll be a good experience for their players. Let's move on to the current champions though, Paris Saint-Germain. They won the Champions League for the first time last year. After so many attempts, they finally got over the line with a very fresh new style. Because in the past, they had Mbappe, Messi, Neymar, and tried to do it this robotic way. And now they were like, you know what? Let's actually get a manager in, get some young players in. Everyone care for each other, and bang, just like that, they managed to get the result and they managed to win the Champions League. And no one could deny they deserved it. And they've let go of Gigi Donnarumma and they've brought in Lucas Chevalier from Lille. Yeah, I'm a little bit unsure about the decision. I think Donnarumma as a shot stopper, that's what you really need. If you're a PSG, you don't need a technicality football guy. So maybe it can be a little bit tricky for them. They've got Atalanta, Barcelona, Leverkusen, Bayern Munich, Spurs and Newcastle. So they've got probably one of the hardest draws you can think of. Does that mean they're not going to finish top 8 again? They did finish quite low last time when they won the whole thing. Could it happen again? I think they'll take it if it means they're going to win again. I think they'll beat Spurs, Newcastle, Atalanta, Leverkusen. But Bayern and Barcelona, I'm not too sure about. But I think they'll get enough points to finish in the top 8. So that is actually 8 teams done. And there's still a few teams here to look at. PSV Eindhoven, they won the league against Ajax last season when Ajax bottled it. They were the ones who stepped up and stole it. Now they beat us, Liverpool, in the last group game of last season. And they finished 14th in the end, which is very good for them. They beat Juventus in the playoffs, which is a remarkable result, but in the end they lost to Arsenal in the round of 16, which is a shame. They do have some really talented players. Ivan Perisic is there, Dennis Mann, Joey Veerman is there, but when you got a draw of Liverpool, Atletico Madrid, Newcastle, Bayern, Napoli, it's a little bit harder than what they had last season, and on that basis I think it could be unseeded playoff, but there's a really big chance they get eliminated early here. Tell you what, I'll say unseeded for now, but we might change that because I think their draw is a lot harder than a lot of the teams here. Let's move on to Karabakh now from Azerbaijan. They have got experience in the Champions League before. They've got 2 winnable games in Copenhagen and Ajax, but every other game for them looks impossible to win. So sorry, Karabakh. I'm going to say you're going to get eliminated very early on. You might get 5-6 points, but sorry, that's not going to be good enough. Now let's move on to Real Madrid, who've won the most Champions Leagues. I have got them as my favourites for the Champions League this season. Not because I think they're a better team than PSG, Liverpool, Arsenal, Barcelona, but I just think the fact that they've got the magic behind Mbappe, Vinicius, and now they brought in Xabi Alonso as manager, something could click when all the other teams slightly slip. That's what I think Real Madrid could do. It's what they always do. The luck goes their way. It could go their way again. I think they're certain to get to the top 8. I will say every single year they've won the Champions League, they usually start really slowly. Even last year, they had to win a playoff against Man City before they got through. But their fixtures this year look really comfortable. Their only tough games are really Liverpool and Manchester City. Apart from that, the other 6 you should win. Now, Slavia Praha, they've got both Bodo Glimt and Pafos in their draw, which means you could get 6 points there. And then they're home to Barcelona, Athletic Bilbao and Arsenal. So their draw does make it achievable for them to get out if they can make it an intimidating place to come for teams like Arsenal. But unfortunately, Slavia Prague, I'm going to say you just about don't. On the basis that some of these other teams here I think are slightly more experienced than you and have slightly bigger star quality. But let's move on to Sporting now. They've won the Portuguese League 2 years in a row, but they have lost their star man in Victor Gyökeres. Pedro Gonçalves is still there, Trincao is still there, and Luis Suarez is there. No, not that Luis Suarez, and different Luis Suarez is in Lisbon right now. In terms of fixtures, at home they've got Kairat, Marseille, PSG and Club Brugge. And then away they're going to Bayern, Juventus, Napoli and Bilbao. So all of their away games I think are quite hard, but Sporting do genuinely do well in Europe. I back them to make the playoffs. It depends which playoffs they make. I'm going to say unseeded for now. I don't think they'll get as many points as some of these teams here, but yeah, I think they'll get the playoffs. Let's move on to Tottenham Hotspur, who qualified through winning the Europa League. Thomas Frank's first time in Europe, but he's made some really good purchases in Xavi Simons, Mohamed Kudus, who've got European experience, both of them do, and Randall Colomwani on loan. What a transfer to make there. That's a really good forward if you need a bit of pace in your attack, as well as Dominic Solanke and Richarlison and Brennan Johnson on either side. It's a really good attacking unit Tottenham have, and I think it could do really well for them. Honestly, if you look at their fixtures, Dortmund, Copenhagen, Villarreal, Slavia at home, you'd back them to win probably all 4 of those. I'm going to say they just missed out top 8 though, and they finished as one of the best teams in the seeded playoffs, which would be really good for Thomas Frank's first time in Europe. But if they don't do as well, they'll still get to the playoffs in my opinion. Their squad is way too good to not get the playoffs, just unseeded way. Okay, so 2 teams left now. Union Saint-Gilloise from Belgium. They've got Sofiane Boufal, ex-Southampton player, who's a really good midfielder for them. They have been in the Europa League in the last few seasons. They've got a guy who... They got Alexis McAllister's brother, who played against him in that Liverpool versus USG game a few years ago. Their winnable games may be PSV, Galatasaray, Marseille. You could hopefully get results there, but they've got very tricky fixtures in Bayern, Atletico Madrid and Inter Milan. You'd have to do very well to win any points there. I think last year, Young Boys were the ones who got the least points. It could be USG this year, but I'd probably back someone else to finish below them, but I think USG, sorry. Finally, we go to Spain to see Villarreal, who have brought in Thomas Partey on a free. Still got Gerard Moreno up front, a really experienced squad. They've brought in Georges Mikitadze from Lyon, which I think is a really smart transfer. Even though they've got the atmosphere about them, their draw is very tricky. Spurs, Juve, City, Dortmund, Leverkusen, which really makes the only winnable games Ajax, Copenhagen and Pafos. If they get 9 points there, which you're kind of depending on them to, then you could say, right, let's get a draw at Spurs and City and hopefully that's enough. Yes, it could be, but I think it's slightly tricky for Villarreal. I think there's a real chance to get eliminated here. Let's put them in unseeded for now, and we're going to count up. Okay, so to start with, we have 9 teams right now in my top 8. Which one of these teams do I think I least expect to get the maximum amount of points I can? I think, to be honest, I think Arsenal, Liverpool, Barcelona, I am fairly certain these 3 are definitely going to finish high up. It could be PSG, genuinely, even though the current winners, they've got the hardest draw of every team here. I think I have to keep Chelsea here just because of how comfortable their draw is. Bayern Munich, they are going to some tough grounds. I think they're playing Arsenal and PSG. Could it be them? Possibly. They did also not finish in the top 8 last season. Real Madrid never start well though, and Man City have just been Man City the last few years. Atletico, they've got some tough games as well, but they genuinely make it really tricky at home for you. So I'm going to say it's tricky. I'm going to say Bayern Munich are the ones who drop out. So then that becomes my top 8. I'm probably going to stick with that order actually. Barcelona, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Atleti, City, PSG, Real Madrid. I think that's a good prediction for top 8. Yes, Bayern Munich will expect themselves to be there. So will Dortmund. So will Inter Milan. They got there last season. They finished, I think, really high up last season, actually. I've kind of underestimated them a little bit. But that's my top 8. But now let's fix my seeded playoffs, because there's only meant to be 8 teams here. Who do I think is quite not going to get the wins that they need to be seeded? Maybe Newcastle, yes, they've got good fixtures, and yes, it's a tough place to go to, but do they have the European guile of the other teams? Possibly not. I think Napoli do. I think Marseille maybe don't. So I'll put Marseille down. I think Atalanta's, because they got a new manager, I'm going to have them down as well. Galatasaray, I think I have to keep it. I think they're just in such a good position right now, which means one more team to not finish there. probably... Does it have to be Newcastle because they don't have the elite striker that they used to have? I'm going to say just about, yeah. So that is going to be my seeded playoff teams. Dortmund, Bayern Munich, Juventus, Inter Milan, Galatasaray, Benfica, Napoli, Tottenham. I'm happy with that as my top 8, which means in my unseeded playoffs now, 2 of these teams are not going to make the playoffs. Who is not going to quite get there? Leverkusen, I mean, the fact that they've got a manager situation going on, I mean, I think Villarreal, now I think about it, I think Villarreal have to go down. Yes, I love Villarreal as a club, but they have got such tricky fixtures this year. I think I would really struggle to say them. Club Brugge, I've only got them here just because they, typically do quite well in Europe. They get the points. Bilbao would struggle a little bit. PSV are going to struggle a little bit. I think Atalanta I'll keep, just because I think they've got enough about them. Newcastle I'll keep. Leverkusen I'll keep. Sporting I'll keep. So for me, it's between PSV, Club Brugge, and possibly Bilbao. I think those are the 3 teams I'm thinking about here, because I think Monaco can do it. Yes, it's tricky for them. They haven't got the expert level that they used to when they had Mbappe, Bernardo Silva and all those guys. I think all the other teams have got slightly better fixtures than these teams. Yes, PSV were very good last year. That's why I'm kind of showing them a bit of respect. They beat Juventus. They beat Liverpool. They only got demolished by Arsenal, really. I mean, that's fair. Club Brugge, they did very well last year. They beat Atalanta, but I'm going to have them just missing out. On the basis that I think these other teams have slightly more high-class quality about them. Okay, so that is my final predictions. The top 8, Barcelona, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Atletico Madrid, Man City, PSG and Real Madrid. The only ones I'm slightly concerned about there are probably PSG and Man City, I would say. Everyone else I'm quite certain on. But Real Madrid just mess up every single time they start the competition, so possibly them. The seeded playoffs, it's going to be Borussia Dortmund, Bayern Munich, Juventus, Inter Milan, Galatasaray, Benfica, Napoli and Tottenham. In the unseeded playoffs, it's going to be Bilbao, Monaco, PSV, Bayer Leverkusen, Sporting, Marseille, Atalanta, Newcastle, which means the eliminated teams are going to be Olympiacos, Ajax, Bodo Glimt, Copenhagen, Frankfurt, Kairat, Paphos, Karabakh, Slavia Praha, Union Saint-Gilloise, Villarreal and Club Brugge. I think I really want Club Brugge to stay up. I mean, these 2 could easily stay up. Any one of these, I think, could be relegated. We will see some big boys relegated this year. I think that's a huge difference we've seen already. The competition this year looks a little bit stronger already. I think that's one thing we've seen already. There are some teams that are guaranteed to probably go down in this little mix of teams here. But apart from that, every other team that's going to stay up will be really, really good European side, and I can't wait for the knockouts. So that is my predictions, guys. Just before I leave, I'm going to predict my top scorer of the group stage to be Kylian Mbappe of Real Madrid. I think his fixtures are just too good. I think they'll definitely get something there. Other shouts, maybe Alexander Isak, Lautaro Martinez, Harry Kane. That was also a shout there. But I'm really unsure about that. But that's what I'm going to go for. Leave your comments down below. What would you have changed? Are Bayern Munich dead set to get the top 8? Or are their fixtures too hard? Am I overhyping Atletico Madrid a little bit here? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to the Sportologist on Spotify to listen to my new podcasts. Thank you guys for watching. And I'll see you guys all later.